Hello friends! It has been 7 years since my first video where I talked about my book design portfolio, and I thought it was high time to do another one. The process has changed quite a bit over the years. To start with, I was kind of exploring, as you do at the beginning of a career, figuring out how this book design thing worked. But these days, I actually have a process, which is fantastic. All of my designs are done on this baby here, my iPad Pro. There is one exception to this, and we'll come to that a bit later on in the video. I feel like I'm in a Wes Anderson film sitting here like this. The first selection of books that I wanted to share with you is actually a series that I did recently for an author called Beth Greenberg. She has written this awesome series. It's a romance series about Cupid. The premise is that Cupid is expelled from Olympus and has to hack it in modern day human society. Much hilarity ensues. Now, Beth already had a set of book covers for these, and she wanted to refresh them, give them a bit of a new, more modern feel, and that's where she came to me. In approaching this, I wanted to create something that was really colourful and fun and modern, but also harked back to that kind of Greek vase style. We explored having actual figures in the designs, and having Aphrodite and Ares up the top of this first cover, and then Cupid falling physically to the ground. But then we decided that it was going to be better for the series to have more representational imagery rather than physical humans being illustrated, or gods in this case. So for each of the books, the top part of the cover represents the realm of the gods, and the bottom part represents modern day Earth. I love this because it gave me lots of opportunities to illustrate different aspects of this world. Once we had the imagery nailed down, I looked at the typography and did some different lettering options for the author. In the end, we went with this one that's quite fun. It's very bold, it's very easy to read at a small scale, and we were both very, very happy with it. I think that the final covers look really bright and fun, especially when they're all together, but they also have that mythological little spark to them as well. Moving on, we have this cover here, which was a bit of a dream project, to be honest, because if you've been watching this channel or my work for any period of time, you'll know I'm obsessed with shiny things, and this was an opportunity to work with foil, and not just any foil, but this kind of holographic foil that changes colours when you look at it in different lights, and I love that. This book has an ordinary edition as well, but this was a special edition just for this box. Now, the great thing about Bookish Box's special editions is that they try to add in as much glitz and glamour as they possibly can, and as a designer, that is an absolute dream. The back is also foiled and shiny, and it has a quote from the book. And not only does this have painted edges, but it also has a decorative design on the edges, which is based on the design of the cover. Inside, we have end papers by Weebel, whose art I will link below. We have different art on the back and front end papers. I designed a custom book plate for the author to sign. The naked hardback also has this lovely holographic, super shiny foil, and oh, I just loved working on this project, really. Then we have The Road to Madipur by David Whitted. This was a really fun project as well. Not as much shiny foil, but I always like to add a bit of gold where I possibly can on a book cover. This is a book about a doctor from New Zealand who goes to India, and the adventures that he has there. It's kind of a medical drama. There's a bit of a romance in there. So I wanted to really capture that on the cover. So you'll see here in the close-up, we have these two figures walking towards each other. It's very much about that kind of connection between people and the journey that these two characters go on. I wanted to include some Indian imagery in there as well, because the setting is very key to the book as a whole. But David, the author, also really wanted to have some kind of medical imagery on there. So the way we solved this problem was by taking the paisley design and adding some sort of hidden elements in there. There are different medical instruments and symbols hidden within this pattern. Once again, we have a hand-lettered title that I did to kind of match with the whole theme, the different shapes that we find within the cover itself. And overall, I think the contrast works really well with this. It works well as a thumbnail, and I think it's quite appealing on a bookshelf as well. This next project was also an absolute delight to work on, and this was actually with a local author, so I got to meet her in person. The story is also set in New Zealand, and it is about a woman who is obsessed with broken things. The title is Broken is Beautiful, and I really wanted wanted to encapsulate that and maybe have some sort of broken pottery in the cover design. The initial concept looked like this. Looking back on it, doesn't look that great, but I think it did communicate the idea. But when it came to the development side of things, I decided to explore using physical elements within this design. This isn't something I often do. Normally I don't have time to use physical objects and photograph, and it doesn't really fit with my illustration style. That said, this was an opportunity for me to use illustration in a physical way and then go in and change things later with Photoshop. Let me explain. Basically what I did was I got a whole bunch of plain plates. What I wanted to do was paint on them and then break the plate, photograph them, add the typography, et voila, we'd have a book cover. So I went to a local op shop, just like a second-hand vintage shop, thrift shop I think is what you call it in the States, and I got a whole lot of plates. I got some paint so that I could paint on the plates, and this is what I came up with. Now this isn't actually the final one that I used. This was a bit of an experiment. I found that the blue paint didn't work all that well, and actually I ended up doing the final one in black paint, and that's because I had some different styles of paint in black. I had a pen in a couple of different line weights, as well as the liquid paint, so that made it so much easier to control the lines and just make the design more precise. Once I'd finished painting the plate, I realized that I just couldn't bring myself to break this thing that I'd spent so long painting. Instead, we decided that I would do it digitally. I brought the design into Photoshop, used the cutout tool to break it into shapes that worked well for the composition of the book cover, added some hand lettering for the title, and here we have it. Here is the final cover, and I'm so delighted by how this came out. I love designing for poetry collections because there's so much imagery that I can draw upon for the cover. And Paradise by Andrew Sutherland was no exception. This book was published by Fremantle Press last year. This poetry collection is an exploration of the poet's positive HIV diagnosis, as well as the time that he spends between Hong Kong and Australia. And we really wanted to capture those two things on the cover, but not in too obvious a way. We explored different ways of using the flora and fauna of both Hong Kong and of Australia in sort of contrasting ways. And in the end, we decided on these two ibises, which are found in both countries, but they both have very different colors. We played around with different amounts of foliage all around the cover, and in the end we landed on this. In the background there are all these tendrils, and I wanted them to sort of look like they were coming together and merging, and my inspiration for that was botanical, but also looking at the lymph nodes and the nervous system of the human body. This is because HIV is a disease that attacks the nervous system, so I wanted a sort of subtle way to include that in the cover without being too on the nose. Also within these leaves we have the lymph nodes and again those tendrils, sort of linking how humans are connected with nature. Then for the typography, we explored a few different options for this, but in the end went for something that really echoed the shapes within the birds and the foliage on the cover, and I think that pulls it all together really well. This final set of designs is a set of Shakespearean covers for a company called Olympia Latan. They are a luxury handbag company based in Paris. I still can't quite believe that I get to work with them because they do the most amazing stuff, and I have an example of one of their clutches that I'm going to show you in a minute. But I did this collection starting off with Romeo and Juliet, and quite frankly when I licensed this design to them I didn't think that much would come of it, but it turns out that this was one of their best-selling designs. Following that success they asked me to design a series of other Shakespeare covers to go along with the first. These are the ones that are available, and there are some more that are coming up very soon as well. I have an example here of one of the covers that has actually been made into a design. This one is no longer available, but it is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, and I cannot believe how incredibly beautiful this is. I'll give you some close-up shots, but yeah, I still can't quite believe that I get to work on these projects. So there we have it. Those are just a few of the designs that I've done over the past year and a half. And yeah, I'm so happy to be able to share them with you on YouTube. If you want to see more of my work, you can look over on my portfolio website, which will be linked down below. I do work with indie authors on their book projects. So if you're interested in working with me, all the links are down below as well. You can get in touch with me through my website. If you'd like to see how my work has evolved over the years, you can have a look at my first ever book portfolio, which is here. Or if you'd like to see a slightly more updated but still quite old one, there is another one right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!